Welcome, students, to another riveting lecture from Krista's Fireside Lectures for JRN1. Happy Women's Day for Sunday, and today I'm going to teach you how to write a story lead. So, if you have done this little lesson, which you should have done already, but if you haven't, please make sure that you do it. It gives you the reason why we have story leads and what is in a lead. Okay, so we've got the 5 W's and the H. Okay. It also gives you an example of a news article with the anatomy. So I've highlighted the different parts to show you what they are. A lot of students confuse the headline with the lead. The headline is different from the lead, and we'll see this just now in the practical exercise. But basically, you need to look through this, go through it, make sure that you understand it. I've highlighted all of the different parts for you, and then I've given you an exercise for you to do for yourself. I've also given you readings and exercises and also a multiple choice quiz. So now we're going to go into this with another news article. Just for a little bit of practical experience, I'm going to explain it to you again. And so here we have a News 24 article. This is the headline. You can see, firstly, that the conventions of a headline are that it doesn't use full sentences. This is the only time that you do not use full sentences in your writing. Otherwise, you always use full sentences. Here we've got 16 police officers bust in OR Tambo drug sting. 13 Tshwane traffic officers nabbed for corruption. Okay, so that is the headline. Here we've got the date of release, which is the 10th of August. And here is the byline. Ooh, not that, just this. Here is the byline. The person who wrote this is called Malibongwe Daimane. And it's released by News 24. Available to share through Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, and email. Okay. Now here we have our photograph. Remember that the image that you use in your article should somehow enhance the story and give the audience a visual connection to the story. Okay, now we can see in the background here it's a private residence. It looks like a private residence. There's a front door and windows, and there's a garage door. And here we can see, and that's also looks like a private car. And then we can see the cop cars here with the hawks on the side. Okay, there is no caption for this particular image, although you should normally have a caption that explains particular visual points of focus in the image. So it might not be ethical to identify whose house this is, which is probably why you wouldn't be able to put in a caption in. I imagine that, you don't want to identify people's houses in a caption like this or in an image like this, because it is, and you'll find later what this means, but it's sub judice, which is under the investigation of the courts. So you may not identify or expose new information while it is either before trial or during an ongoing trial. But we'll leave that for another time. In the meantime, let's look at this. We've got the image credit, which you must always include. Felix Tlangamandla is the person who took the image, but the company is Gallo Images, and the publisher is Network 24. Now, this is an interesting new convention that some online news articles have added to their article, or some newsline publishers. Online news publishers, sorry, long weekend, have added to their news sites. And that is a very brief bulleted summary of the article. So we can see here 16 police officers were arrested by the Hawks following a 2-year undercover investigation. A 17th suspect will be added to the case at a later stage because he is in isolation due to COVID-19. Oh, shame. The Hawks said that they also arrested 13 Tshwane officers for demanding bribes from motorists in a different sting operation. Okay. So, that is a summary of the article. It is not the lead. The lead uses full sentences and not bullet points. Here is your lead here. 16 police officers have been arrested by the Hawks for allegedly, and remember this, allegedly, because they haven't been proven to have done it yet in a court of law, allegedly stealing narcotics confiscated from drug mules at OR Tambo International Airport. They are alleged to have been doing this for several years. Okay? A 17th police officer would be added to the case at a later stage as he was in isolation due to COVID-19, said the NPA, National Prosecuting Authority, in a statement. Okay. So, there we go. And then lastly, you can have 1, 2, or 3 sentences in your lead, and they basically explain the 5 W's and the H, the most important pieces of information about a news article. The reason why we put it all up front first is to try and draw the reader in, get them mentally asking more questions, and then answer those questions in the rest of the article. Okay. So, we can take a look here. Who would be your 16 police officers have been arrested. Okay, that would be what? They have been arrested. So, start this from the beginning, get it right. 16 police officers is your who. What have been arrested? Here's your how. Okay, by the Hawks. Why? For allegedly stealing narcotics confiscated from drug mules. Where? At OR Tambo International Airport. Now, you guys might be tempted to go, when is for several years, but in actual fact, the when is implied in the fact that they have been arrested. It's recent. So we can see that this is 10th of August. They probably have been arrested on the 10th of August or late on the 9th of August in the evening. The when in this case is implied. It's not stated, obviously. You have to be aware of the fact that the 5 W's and the H are, they hang on each other. They're not unrelated. So you can't just go when several years and then who, 16 police officers, if you want to say have been arrested, because they weren't arrested for several years. Do you see how that doesn't make sense? They all hang together and they're all interrelated. And that is how you make a lead from those 5 W's and the H. The 5 W's and the H, for those people who haven't done the worksheet here, again, who is the story about? What has happened? When did it happen? Where did it happen? Why did it happen? And how did it happen? Okay, so those are your 5 W's and your H. And that is the very backbone of a news lead. Okay. You could even make an argument for saying that Tambo International Airport isn't really the where, because maybe that isn't where they were arrested. So, there is an argument to be made for that, in which case the where would also be implied and possibly answered later on in the article. So, the importance of including quotes, I just want to touch on these things very quickly. The importance of including quotes. The reason why we quote people directly is because it adds a certain level of credibility. It's not just the journalist going, this is what happened and that's what happened and this person said that. When you quote somebody directly, it lends more gravity, it lends more credibility to the report, because this is somebody who is qualified to comment on these things. The Director of Public Prosecutions in Gauteng, Advocate Andrew Chauke. He's not just, the neighbor. He's not the friend of a friend, cousins, uncles, roommates, ex-girlfriend, whatever. He is qualified, and this is what you must look for when you are getting quotes, is this kind of qualification. Don't just quote anyone, because what's the point? You would need to quote someone who has weight behind them. Okay, just take a look here. This is not a direct quote, even though it says that Pindi Mjondwane said so. Okay, this is a problem here. Can you see how they have misspelled this person's name at least once? It's either Mjonondwane or it's Mjonondwana. It can't be both. Now, this represents a distinct lack of dedication and detail orientation on the part of the subs, because in order to get people's names right, you need to sort of pay attention. It might have been a mistake on the part of the journalist, but the sub-editors that get hold of the story afterwards and make it publishable should have picked up this error. And considering the fact that it's the Gauteng NPA regional spokesperson, it's not like, it's just an odd person off the street. Even if it is an odd person off the street, you must always pay them the respect of getting their name right every single time. It is very, very important when you are writing news articles. Sources give you their time and their quotes for free. And information, quotes, are the journalist's stock and trade. You get that for free. You cannot buy it. And so what you give back, what you trade for that information, is respect. This error here, even though it is just an error that people make sometimes, does show a lack of respect. So, the person here is probably going to read this article and go, yo, they got my name wrong, what the hell? And you don't want that from your sources, because sometimes if you get their names wrong, they can take offense and they won't want to talk to you again. So, anyway, let's carry on with this. The importance of quotes. Yeah, lends weight to the article. It shows that you've done your research, you've spoken to the right people, and you have based the information that you've got on reliable, credible sources. Not just someone who's standing by that you questioned and they went, oh, well, I think maybe. No. These people actually knew what was going on. They were involved in the operation. Okay. Here we've got, in the middle of the article, also read. Now, this is also an interesting convention that people have sort of adopted over time. They'll put related ads, ads for related articles in between the different paragraphs. And this is because people who read these kinds of articles might go, oh, hold on a minute. Let's look at that one as well. Let's look at this one as well. But they might not go all the way down to the bottom and go related. Let's see what we've got here. So, this is a sneaky way of sort of getting more traffic into your website and getting more views on your articles by sort of slotting them in there, but they have to be related to the content of the article. So this is all about crime, this is all about stealing and drugs and, Tambo Airport. So those are all related to this case, not necessarily directly, but in terms of content. You don't have to worry about doing that, because this is the kind of thing that the website, the tech gods will add in, and the editor. They'll decide on that kind of thing. This is not something that the journalist did. Okay, so I think that is a pretty good sort of overview of an article in general. I have waffled a bit, I'm sorry about that. And I know that I'm trying to keep these short for you guys so that you don't, chow your data. But if you have questions about this, please make sure that you ask. Don't hesitate. You must clarify any aspects of this lesson that you don't understand, because it is very important for you to be able to create an effective lead. To that end, I have prepared an exercise that I'm going to do now with you. It comes from a very, very old assessment from a number of years ago. So don't expect to see this in any of your assessments. But I think it's a pretty good example. So imagine that you're a journalist and you arrive at a scene and something has happened and you have taken notes. Now, these are the notes that you have taken. You can only rely on the information that you get from your sources. You may not make stuff up. It is highly unethical to make stuff up, to just like fill in details that you might not have. As a journalist, it's not allowed. And there have been journalists who have done that. They've lost their jobs. It's as simple as that. It's unethical. So, let's see what information you, as a journalist, managed to write down in your notebook. Police used rubber bullets and stun grenades to disperse protesters. The protests lasted from Thursday morning well into Saturday night. Large quantities of alcohol were found in abandoned bottles after protesters had been dispersed. They just came and took our student cards, said Figile Mkhize, a student at Wits. The University of Witwatersrand experienced protracted protests this week. There were guys wearing EFF Student Command t-shirts, but we had never seen them on campus before, said a student who wishes to remain anonymous. 5 protesters were killed with live ammunition. Now, for those of you who, have been following the news at all, you should know that this statement here should start the alarm bells ringing. So I'm going to highlight it. There is a saying in journalism, if it bleeds, it leads. 5 protesters were killed with live ammunition. So this is the kind of thing that you want to look out for when you have a whole stash of information that you've taken down at random in your notebook. You haven't ordered it in any way because you've been too busy interviewing people and writing and checking, who was there, what are their credentials, can I quote them, can't I, and making sure that you get their words right and their names right. So you're not going to have a chance to edit the information on the fly. You're going to need to take the information down, and then you look for the most important newsworthy piece of information. Okay, so those killed were identified as members of the Economic Freedom Fighters, but not of their student command. Those killed were not students at Wits, according to police. Police are following up on information offered by students. An internal investigation has been launched into how the rubber bullets were replaced with live ammunition. When the first student went down and we saw the blood, we shouted to each other to stop firing, but it was already too late, said Lieutenant Smith tearfully. Students reported that the protests began on Thursday morning after residences were stormed by people who appeared to be part of the EFF Student Command. Private security forces were overrun, and the entrances and exits to the university were barricaded. Police were able to gain access at one entrance using nyalas. For those of you who don't know, nyalas are those big truck things that the cops use. Protesters stole student cards from resident students to gain access to buildings. Several buildings were set afire before police were able to subdue protesters and secure the campus for emergency services on Saturday evening. There were broken beer and wine bottles everywhere. The place smelled like a bar, recalls Chief Fire Marshal Tulani Magwaza. Okay, so that is all of the information that you've got. So far, the most important thing that we've got is 5 protesters were killed with live ammunition. And maybe that should be our who, 5 protesters, what, were killed, how, with live ammunition. Okay, now, if we're going to do this, let's do it properly. Let's put this here. Copy. No, not edit header. Paste. Okay, 5 protesters. So, this is our, what did we say? Who? Let's just put that in there. Who? And obviously, you're not going to be writing the who and the what and everything in your actual lead, but I'm just doing this for you guys so you can see. How? Okay, so what do we need now? We need the when, where, and the why. Yeah, I think that's it. Okay, so when were they killed? Well into Saturday night. I think we can go, and now you don't know exactly when they were killed, but you know that the protests lasted from Thursday to Saturday. So we can say 5 protesters were killed with live ammunition during protracted protests at, okay, and this is your where. That's university, because you want to know where, which took place between Thursday and Saturday evening. That would be your when. Now, that is one sentence. Next sentence, and let's just highlight what we've used. We've used that. We've used that. And you see how we've condensed this into one sentence. When and if you get this kind of exercise in an assessment, you mustn't just copy-paste the pieces of information in the right order, because you need to use your own brains and write the sentence using the information that you've got in your own words. Make your own sentences. This is something that you need to learn to do as a journalist. You also need to learn to do it as a student, because you can't just quote what everybody else writes. It's never ever going to benefit you in any way. You're only relying on other people's sentences, and then later on, when you get to actually have to write your own sentences, you won't have any practice. So start doing it now. Create your own writing, but base it on what you've been given. And that goes for the textbook, that goes for any other sources as well. So where can we find an internal investigation has been launched into how rubber bullets were replaced with live ammunition. This says to us that they don't know how it happened. They have no clue how they took out the guns with the rubber bullets and all of a sudden there were real bullets there. So we don't have to put this whole thing in there. We can simply add police were unable to explain how this took place. Okay, and that is your why. So let's look at this quickly and make sure that it all hangs together. Your who did it happen to? 5 protesters. What happened? They were killed. How? With live ammunition. Where? During, Wits University. And then when? During protracted protests which took place Thursday to Saturday. Why? We don't know. Okay. Then from there you can where are we? Here we go. Okay. Then you can pick up the next most important information, which is there seems to be some doubt as to whether the people who started the protests were students on campus, because you can even use this from the beginning. You can use this whole sentence because this looks coherent. Here. Students reported that the protests began on Thursday morning after residences were stormed by people who appeared to be part of EFF Student Command. And then you can use this one because this is also important and it should follow logically. Okay, your articles should have some kind of logic behind it. Not necessarily that you use a formula, but that one idea should flow onto the next, and each idea should have its own paragraph. Don't forget that. So, we've used that. Where are we? There. We've used, students reported. Where are we? There. Then we can go either, here we've got a quote. Now, you can choose to put this quote in. Killing me, dude. You can choose to put this quote in after here, because it is a fairly powerful quote and it relates directly to what happened to the 5 protesters. Then, okay, so we've done that. We can put in this quote about the EFF Student Command t-shirts, but they've never seen them before, over here, just to back up what you're saying as the journalist. Then you can look at what else is available. We've got student cards. Okay, copy that down here. Okay, and when you do this kind of exercise, remember that I'm putting these bullets in just to show you where your paragraphs are going to be, but you mustn't use bullets. As you can see with this article, they're not using bullets, they're just using sentences. And if you notice carefully, you'll see that each idea has its own paragraph, even though it might just be one tiny short sentence like this. It doesn't matter. Each idea has its own paragraph. That is a convention in news writing. In fact, it's a convention in writing in general, but news has to be short and to the point, which means that your paragraph, your idea, is going to be 1 or 2 sentences as opposed to 3 or 4 sentences, which is what we normally have in academic writing. There we go. Okay, so from there, let's see, what else have we got? Okay, you can, instead of using this, you can also, well, I suppose you can also just put the next quote there. They just came and took our student cards. Okay, so this is explaining how the protest happened. Like that. Let's leave the alcohol till last, because it doesn't have any bearing on the 5 protesters who were killed with live ammo. Okay, there is an indication, because of the beer and the wine bottles everywhere, that these guys were drunk, and that they, were just raging because they were drunk and angry, as opposed to like a legit student protest. But you can't sort of throw empty beer bottles in the middle of something like this, because it has to be all together, and it has to be part of the logical flow of the article. So what have we got here left? We've got several. Okay. Protesters stole student cards from resident students to gain access to the buildings. Then you've got your quote. Then we can put several buildings were set afire. After that, it's pretty straightforward. Then it's really just a mopping up exercise. It has to be logical, though. Just remember that. So, several buildings were set afire. Okay, so they gained access to the buildings. They set stuff on fire. Then private security forces were overrun, and the entrances and exits were barricaded. Okay, so no one could get in. Police, however, were able to access through... Okay, I'm doing it this way because, like I said, I'm trying to keep this video short. But I might actually want to rewrite this to make it flow better. Just because I'm kind of pedantic that way. And then, once they got in with the Nyalas, they used rubber bullets and stun grenades to disperse the students or the protesters, should we say, because it seems like the students weren't involved. And then, after they were dispersed, here we can throw in the beer bottles. There. Okay, so we've used that. And we'll use our final quote from our fire chief. Copy here. Okay. And please remember that when you have a quote, each quote must have its own line. You can't then start another sentence straight after the quote. You need to leave a line, start a new paragraph, and do another, and then, start writing again. You can leave some of it out. But you can also choose to slot in that last little bit of information somewhere else. Those killed were not students at WITS, according to police. So, you can even work it into this sentence here. So we can write something like, and police confirmed that they were not registered as students at the institution. See how I didn't, okay, I know I've taken the easy way out for the sake of time, but in this instance, I didn't just copy paste that sentence, I rewrote it to blend in with that sentence there so that it works well, so that it flows nicely. So what have we got here? This is our, oh, and please, I didn't use full stops on all of them, but you need to begin a sentence with a capital letter, end a sentence with a full stop. Don't use commas unless you absolutely have to. Try never to use the word whereby, ever. And also make sure that when you quote, you use quotation marks, always. There is our article. Here we have our 5 W's and our H, and then the rest of it in order of most important to least important. Okay. Once you have finished writing the article and giving valid, relevant information, just stop. Try and make sure that you have answered all the questions, and if you look, a legitimate conclusion might be something like once the I don't know, police have confirmed that those responsible for the student deaths will be prosecuted once they have been identified. Okay. Because you might have somebody going, hold on a minute, but what are the cops going to do about the people that killed the students or protesters? Okay. Now we check it over and we go, okay, what happened? Are we implicating anybody, or are we just stating the facts? If there is anybody that might be sort of before a court for some reason, then we need to go alleged. Okay. So we look through it and we go, okay, do we need to use the word alleged anywhere here? Don't think so. Okay. And yeah. That's it. That is our article from this mess of information here. And that's basically how you do it. If you have questions, please make sure that you ask. And yeah, I'll make this available on Call Campus. well, the link will be available on Cole Campus, and yeah, good luck with the F1. Thanks a lot, guys.